Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Fast Forward Expert Roundtable, the entry-level driver training for student transportation webinar. We appreciate you joining us today. As we've got folks signing in here, we're going to start with some introductions. We don't have a lot of webinars that we have done for our student transportation folks, and we're aiming to fix that here, and want to bring you up to speed on some changes that are going to impact potentially some of you very dramatically in terms of your recruiting and so forth. To get things started off, my name is Craig Hart. I'm with Vertical Alliance Group. My background is actually in remote learning. That's the world I have lived in since 2004, both within the transportation side of things and then also within the insurance and financial services worlds as well. So I am very aware of remote learning. And my co-host is Mr. Mark Ray. And Mark is like many of you. He is a former trucking executive. He worked for over 30 years with Frozen Food Express, which is a reefer refrigerator hauler out of Dallas, Texas. So he has managed fleets. He has driven out safety programs to large numbers of drivers. He's had to do all the unpleasant things as well that come with that, such as having to go to court when bad things happen. So he has been where many of you are currently and knows the challenges that you face. But he's also spent time now since he's retired from Frozen Food Express, staying plugged into groups both within and outside the transportation industry. A lot of education, including working with community colleges, trying to address problems like the electrification of school bus fleets. So he is very much still plugged into that world. Now, our two additional guests with us today, we have Jeremy Rose. Jeremy is our video production manager here at Vertical Alliance Group. He's basically had his hands on every piece of content that we have generated for our organization, including all the ELDT training. He's been with us for over 14 years. So if some of you have actually gone through some of our training, you may actually recognize his voice on some of those things, as he does do the voiceover for some of that work as well. And then last, but certainly not least, is Leslie Smith. And Leslie is kind of our guru for all things school related here at Vertical Alliance Group. She's actually been with us over 4 years and has done and worn many different hats within our organization. And she's going to be a great resource for those of you on the call today who want to hear more. So good morning, everybody. Appreciate you joining us. How you doing, Mark?
I'm fantastic, and I'm really excited to listen to what our expert, Mr. Jeremy Rose, has to say today on the long anticipated rollout of the entry-level driver training program that's been in discussions for years. It's set to go in February. Our industry needs this, and this is really a step forward in and you guys in the school bus industry, I know you're really looking for ways to improve your fleet, to attract people. I would encourage you to really stay tuned to this. I think Jeremy and his team have invested thousands of hours producing very high quality content that's not only compliant, but above compliant with the FMCSA. So it's rolling out, and look forward to getting the details in our presentation today.
Excellent. And Jeremy, Leslie, thank you both for being here with us today. Before we get underway, we are going to cover a lot of information in today's session, and we are going to do our very best to paint you a picture with our words, but we also understand that some of you may want to go into greater detail on the platform, the content, how it's delivered, how it all works, what it looks like. And we do have the ability to host demos of the platform. That's actually something that Leslie will do. It takes about 20-30 minutes for her to showcase how the things work so that you can understand how ELDT will slide into either the existing program that you are currently working with, or if you are someone who is brand new to our platform, has never heard of Vertical Alliance Group before, can understand how you can leverage the system for ELDT and then safety and other things as well. So you can schedule a demo with her at that phone number below, or you can send her a quick email, and then she can get that on your calendar, and then you guys can make that happen. So, but without further ado, Jeremy, I'm going to turn this over to you. Now, one thing before we get started with everyone, this is obviously a situation where we want to answer your questions that you have as you're going through the platform or going through the presentation with us today, rather. The easiest way to do that is to ask us in chat, and I recommend you open your chat window now. And then at the bottom, there's a little button that says to, T-O, and select everyone. And that means the questions that you ask can be seen by everyone on the call today. There are no silly questions. We're going to cover a lot of information, probably answer a bunch of your questions with what Jeremy has put together. But you may have questions beyond what we present today, and we're going to work our darndest to get you some answers. So go ahead, open up your chat window if you want, just to let us know who you are, where you're coming from. We'd love to know more about you. Excellent. All right. And without further ado, Jeremy, take it away.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy Rose. I'm the video production manager with Infinit-I Workforce Solutions Vertical Alliance Group. Today, I'm here to talk to you about entry-level driver training, the new regulations from the FMCSA. So first off, please note that this presentation is designed for those that have little to no prior knowledge about what entry-level driver training is or why it's important. If you're already familiar with the new regulations, then most of this information will not be new to you. However, stick around. We're going to try to answer as many specific questions as we can. Next slide, please. There's a lot of specific material to cover in these new regulations, more than we have time to go over here in this presentation today. If your question is not answered during this presentation, like Craig said, there will be a Q&A section afterwards, so please don't hesitate to submit your question. Or if you're the type of person who wants to get your hands dirty, or you just like to brush up on things yourself, all of this information is online in the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations at www.ecfr.gov, specifically under Title 49, Part 380, Special Training Requirements. You can also find more information about the Training Provider Registry, which we will discuss at length at www.tpr.fmcsa.dot.gov. This presentation will focus on general ELDT information as well as specific information for Class B, S, and P endorsements. So let's jump into things. Next slide, please. What is entry-level driver training? Beginning at February 7th, 2022, entry-level drivers will be subject to the requirements in the entry-level driver training, or ELDT, regulations. The whole purpose of this is to set a minimum standard of training requirements for entry-level CDL holders. These regulations are established by the FMCSA. Next slide, please. Who does this apply to? This is the important part. These new regulations apply to drivers who are obtaining a Class A or Class B CDL for the first time, upgrading an existing Class B CDL to a Class A CDL, or obtaining a school bus S, passenger P, or hazardous materials H endorsement for the first time.
Now,
Next slide.
Jeremy, is the ELDT exclusively theory, or is there a behind the wheel component as well?
Absolutely, there's a behind the wheel component. We'll cover that more in depth here in just a little bit after we establish who all is affected, etc. So, what about current CDL holders? The ELDT regulations are not retroactive, meaning that the entry-level driver training requirements do not apply to individuals holding a valid CDL or an SP or H endorsement issued prior to February 7, 2022. If an applicant who obtains a commercials learner's permit prior to February 7, 2022 obtains a CDL before the CLP or renewed CLP expires, then the applicant is not subject to the ELDT requirements. Basically, if you have a CDL or you have a CLP and get your CDL before February 7th, or if you have a CLP and you get it before that CLP expires, then ELDT does not apply to you, period. Next slide, please. What's the point of all this? The ELDT regulations establish a federal standard for training CDL applicants. Applicants must successfully complete this training before they will be permitted to take the CDL skills test, or in the case of the H endorsement, the knowledge test. This means that all new entry-level drivers should have roughly the same amount of training when they take their CDL or endorsement tests. The desire here is to prevent untrained individuals from obtaining a CDL or endorsement, and to make sure that all entry-level drivers meet the necessary basic threshold to safely operate a CMV. Next slide, please. Now that we know who is affected by the ELDT regulations, let's talk about what the training actually looks like. So there is no federally mandated amount of training time that a driver trainee must complete for ELDT. The FMCSA only requires that the training cover all topics set forth by the FMCSA. The required topics are broken into two different sections, theory and behind the wheel. Behind the wheel is broken into two further sections, range and public road. As a note, Infinit-I Workforce Solutions as a platform only handles online training, so I'll only be covering the theory portion of the training here, but if you have questions about the behind the wheel training, please do ask. Next slide, please. Are there different requirements? The ELDT regulations are the same for Class A and B, as well as the S, P, and H endorsements. There are no special requirements or regulations that must be followed for the different classes or endorsements outside of the different topics that must be covered. For clarity, what I mean by that is there's nothing that you have to do as far as ELDT is concerned to get your Class B compared to getting your Class A, other than that the topics you must train on are going to be slightly different. There's no class or endorsement that has a hidden amount of specific time or otherwise differing requirement. There's just different topics. Due to the nature of school bus operators requiring a Class B, S, and P endorsement, school bus driver trainees will have to deal with quite a few more topic requirements and potential overlaps than your average driver trainee will. For example, training on railroad crossings is required for Class B, S, and P endorsement driver trainees, meaning that it's quite likely a school bus driver trainee will train on these topics multiple times. Next slide, please. How much training is required? Remember, there is no required time amount for ELDT. You just have to cover all of the topics set forth by the FMCSA for each class or endorsement. The FMCSA has established 29 training topics for Class B, 18 training topics for passenger endorsement, and 11 training topics for S endorsement, meaning a school bus driver trainee starting from scratch will have to cover 58 topics to be trained on the theory portion for their entry-level driver training. As I said earlier, Infinit-I Workforce Solutions is only a theory training provider, so I won't cover the behind-the-wheel topics in depth. But just as a heads up, there are 18 topics for Class B, 6 for for passenger endorsement, and 6 for the school bus endorsement. Some of you might have seen the number 63 thrown around as the required number of training topics for school bus driver trainees in the past. This is because the topics in Class B are broken out into 5 different sections. Some people have mistakenly added the section titles to the list of required topics. That is unnecessary. Training on the 29 topics of Class B covers all of the parameters of the 5 sections. That being said, it's not going to hurt anything if the training that you utilize has 63 topics versus 58 topics or anything like that. Next slide, please. So, what are the topics? I won't read through all of these, but we will leave them on screen for a brief moment. Once again, all of this information is on the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations website at www.ecfr.gov. The sections for Class B are basic operation, safe operating procedures, advanced operating practices, vehicle systems and reporting malfunctions, and non-driving activities. Please note that if you are interested in researching this information yourself, the FMCSA has listed each of these topics with a prompt explaining the minimum information that must be covered by each of these topics. That's too much information to cover in this presentation on its own. But if you have questions about a specific topic, please let me know during the Q&A. Next slide, please. Here are the topics for passenger endorsement. Once again, I won't read through all of them, but we will leave them on the screen briefly. Passenger endorsement covers a number of topics that coincide or overlap directly with the school bus endorsement topics. Next slide, please. And here are the school bus endorsement topics. The vast majority of this information is pretty standard stuff. Again, it's meant to be. The FMCSA's goal here is not to reinvent the wheel. It's just to standardize the training that it takes to get behind one. So most of this information you're probably already training on or have been training on for quite some time. Next slide, please.
I would like to point out for those that are on the call today, all the content items that we've been highlighting on these last 3 slides, these theory topics are already included in the library of coursework that is available for everyone that already uses the Infinit-I Workforce platform. So that is not something that you would need to add additionally. It's already there. For those of you who are not familiar with our platform, obviously we can get you in touch with Leslie and she can talk with you more about that. But this is not something that is separate from the content that you're already using. It's already there. We just have some different groupings we need to activate for you. So,
and these pieces of content will be 5 to 10 minutes in length and conclude with a handful of questions like the other content.
Generally speaking, yes. So we very much believe in the concept that academic learning is better fostered by shorter, more concise pieces of video. So all of our training for entry-level driver training is going to try to follow that methodology. Now, some people are going to look at some of these topics and know right off the top of their heads that there's no way you can fully cover a topic like student management in just 5 minutes. So those instances, some of those videos will be broken out into multiple sections, or you might have a slightly longer video around the 10 to 12 minute mark, that type of scenario, just to make sure that we cover all of the valuable information inherent in that topic.
and for those unfamiliar with the formatting, it's typically an animated video with audio, and then post video is a quiz, typically multiple choice, anywhere between 3 to 10 questions, depending on the amount of material that's covered in there. We do keep the quizzes separate from the training material, so that we can speak for the integrity of the training that is being done. We don't allow people to, quote unquote, do it open book, where they can have the material right beside the questions they need to answer. And individuals can take these sessions multiple times if they need to, which sometimes does happen. And we do allow that functionality as well. And we have tracking on the back end, so you can see all of this occurring.
And there's a certificate of completion that's registered under that individual's names and stored within the system. Is that correct? And
that is correct.
And in this case, shared or integrated with the state licensing agency.
That's correct. We
Yeah,
document
absolutely.
everything in our platform. So if it's something that is done online and done in the system, good, bad, or indifferent, it is all logged. So it can all be reviewed.
And everything is connected with all the different states.
Correct.
All right. So after all of that information, how do you actually get training? The short answer here is to either find a training provider or to become one. But this is where things can get a little more complicated. In order to monitor and regulate these new requirements, the FMCSA has created the Training Provider Registry. Training providers for entry-level driver training must be listed on the Training Provider Registry. Yes, that includes you if you are training your own driver trainees. Becoming an approved training provider requires submitting an electronic application to the Training Provider Registry, self-certifying that you meet all ELDT requirements, affirming under penalty of perjury that you will only teach the prescribed ELDT curriculum, and you must maintain documentation proving ELDT compliance in the event of an audit. Once a training provider has been accepted to the TPR, they'll be assigned a unique training provider ID number, which will appear on a driver trainee's record in the Commercial Driver's License Information System. Next slide, please.
We will be providing some additional information from FMCSA on the follow-up email to this webinar, which will also include a replay and a copy of the presentation deck, because I know some of you are probably writing notes furiously right now as we're moving through this.
Sure.
That will include the steps on how to, the FMCSA steps on how to get set up as a training provider.
Gotcha. So let's say you want to become a registered trainer on the TPR. In order to do that, you must meet one of the two following qualifications. You must either hold a CDL of the same or higher class and with all endorsements necessary to operate the CMV for which training is to be provided. And you must have at least 2 years of experience driving a CMV requiring a CDL of the same or higher class and or the same endorsement. And you must meet all applicable state qualifications requirements for CMV instructors. Or, number 2, you must hold a CADL of the same or higher class and with all endorsements necessary to operate the CMV for which training is to be provided, and have at least 2 years of experience as a behind-the-wheel CMV instructor, and once again, meet all applicable state qualification requirements for CMV instructors. Next slide, please. There are, of course, some exceptions to these rules. Number 1, an instructor is not required to hold a CDL of the same or higher class and with all endorsements necessary to operate the CMV for which training is to be provided if the instructor previously held a CDL of the same or higher class and complies with the other requirements set forth in the first or second qualifications. And then number 2, training providers offering online content exclusively are not required to meet state qualification requirements for theory instructors, though it is important to note they still must meet the other requirements. Another important note, and this is very important if you're going to be doing your own training, if an instructor's CDL has been canceled, suspended, or revoked due to any of the disqualifying offenses identified in 383.51 of the CFR, the instructor is prohibited from engaging in theory instruction for 2 years following the date of his or her CDL being reinstated. So that's not 2 years from when you lose your CDL, that's 2 years from when your CDL is reinstated, just for clarity there. Next slide, please. So let's say you're a driver trainee and you go through all of the required motions of ELDT. What happens after you complete your training? Once a driver trainee completes the required training for whatever they are attempting to do, they will receive a certificate that contains the following information: the date of issuance, the name of the training provider, the mailing address of the training provider, the name of the driver, a certification statement, and then a printed name of the person attesting that the driver has received the required training, and the signature of that same person. This certificate, along with the records of completion that are sent to the training provider registry, are what allows a driver trainee to go and take their CDL or their endorsement test. Without this proof, a driver trainee will not be able to take the test for their CDL or endorsement. And that's really it for the basics of ELDT. As far as regulations go, this one is honestly relatively benign. The vast majority of this training should be or is already being done. The ELDT regulations just help standardize things, and the creation of the TPR helps organize and streamline the information and tracking processes that should go into this type of training. And at this point, I'll go ahead and hand it back over to Craig before we get into the Q&A section.
Yes, and some of you are already asking some great questions in chat. We
Absolutely.
will definitely be getting to those momentarily here because it's worth speaking those out to the crowd. I did just want to remind everyone about the demo and getting that squared away. And to make that easy, we actually have some poll questions for you all that if you'd like to get set up with a demo, have Leslie reach out to you, get something on your calendar so that you can walk through this program and get a better idea of how to implement it, where it works for your organization. That's absolutely something she would love to do. She loves to help folks. While everyone is answering those, let us get some of these questions here. So I know one of the questions that came up, will this cost us more if we are already a member or user of Vertical Alliance Group? The answer to that is no. Existing clients of ours in the student transportation world will get the ELDT content at no additional cost to them. It will be bracketed out in the catalog to make it easy for you to find and assign if that's what you're choosing to do with the system. So there is no additional cost for any of you on the line today who are already existing clients of ours with student transportation.
Also, just to jump in on that,
Sure.
Craig, for clarity, because we had this question asked previously and then also asked again for clarity. So if you are a current member of Infinit-I, you will not be charged more for this product. If you become a member of Infinit-I in the future, a year down the road, 2 years down the road, our current intent is ELDT is a part of being a member of Infinit-I, period. So whether you're a member now or you're a member later, our intent is to have this content available for you.
Excellent. Now, someone was asking about when the ELDT content will be released, and Colin, I appreciate you putting this in chat for us. The S endorsement content should be live early November. The P endorsement will be live on right before Christmas on 12/24. And then the class A and B will be live by 12/31. So all of the content will be live in the system by January 1st, 2022. Again, the requirement doesn't kick in until February, so activity that's done prior to that will not matter, but we will have it done in advance of when you all will need that. So total time of content, that is a great question. Obviously, you saw the number of modules that an individual would potentially need to complete and our average time frame of 5 to 10 minutes on those sessions. We were talking about this prior to the call today because it's hard to pin down. There are different levels of learner achievement. Some people will be able to get through this content in a relatively short period of time. I know Jeremy had mentioned probably about 10 hours. But there may be other individuals that need to take the sessions more than one time to complete them successfully. So it will vary by user. So we are a little bit hesitant to peg it to a specific time frame, but we are not talking about days or weeks of time that an individual would need to spend to go through this content.
Yep.
Excellent. All right, here, let's see some of the other questions. Keep these coming in, folks. These are great, and we will make sure that everyone gets their answers today once I figure out what screen my mouse is on here. There we are. Dun, dun, dun.
For clarity, just to go back a little bit, Craig, sorry, on the when are things going to be released? If people are interested in just kind of getting the basic foundation going, we already have entry-level driver training content on our system. It's been live for years. So our intent is to update that content, obviously, over the course of the next month or 2 months as we go into 2022. But if you just want to lay the groundwork and go ahead and get things started, that content already exists. It's just going to get updated as we move into the new year.
And Jeremy, I assume as the FMCS rolls this out and modifies, adds to, that you and your team will provide updates accordingly?
Absolutely, yeah. It'll be a part of our daily lives for the rest of eternity to keep track of this and make sure that any adjustments that the FMCSA makes will be automatically updated and included in the ELDT package.
For those folks that are not familiar with our program and our organization, Jeremy is part of it, or leads a team of individuals that all they do is create content for both our student transportation folks as well as the folks that are on the trucking side, and we're also dabbling in some additional areas as well, like HR. We are contractually obligated every month to roll out new content. I believe we are the only person in our space that actually does that, puts in writing that we will have new things for you every month. And this will be part of that. And it's Jeremy's goal is to stay on top of these requirements so that we are providing the most accurate information per regulations that are out there. So it's an ongoing project. So these are not going to live forever in one form. They will update consistently over time. So you don't have to worry about whether or not it's covering the correct information. That's a piece that we own and stay on top of. Let's see here. A couple other questions. Is the certificate issued by you guys? That's a good question, actually, Jeremy. What does the certificate of issuance look like for the ELDT? I know we don't have a sample of what that is, but that will be generated automatically by our system.
Absolutely, yeah. We don't have a sample of that just yet, but I think it was in one of the final slides that I covered everything that goes on to that certificate. Absolutely, when a driver trainee completes the, let's say, Class B portion for the theory training, and they pass it successfully, they will receive a certificate of completion. And then they can download that, print that out, save that, whatever they want to do for their own records, obviously. And then our system will automatically send that information to the training provider registry. And that information is disseminated out to the various state organizations that require it.
Excellent. Now, when those updates happen, do those updates, and you may not know this might be more of an IT question, do those updates happen the moment that someone completes it, or is there potentially some kind of, like, it takes an hour or two to catch up at TDR?
There are multiple options for that information. Our intent is to have it as automatic and automated as possible, but it kind of depends on how the training provider registry is functioning. The FMCSA can be a bit hit or miss with some of these pieces of software, so we'll have to see how that operates. Currently, there is functionality for both it to be completely 100% automated. You click the button, it's there, it's done. And then there are the options for it to be updated live once a day, that type of situation. But as a note, the FMCSA does require that training providers have all of this information updated and verified and archived every 48 hours at the minimum.
Okay. Now, is there a minimum passing score on the content that
Yes.
a person has to achieve?
80% is the minimum passing score set by the FMCSA. Our plan, right, and this is going to be change dependent on what type of training that you utilize. The FMCSA is not specific on this. They just give the guideline that the final score must be a minimum of 80% for the entire training. Our plan is to have a minimum 80% score for every piece of content that is in the ELDT module.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, here. Keep them coming, folks. These are some great questions here. These are not questions we hit Jeremy with yesterday in preparation. Mark, do you have anything for Jeremy right now?
Yes, Jeremy. If I'm entering the school bus driving pool and I complete my ELDT, I complete my CDL training, and I'm issued a CDL in the state that I reside in, is there an ongoing FMCSA requirement, a renewal or anything like that, or is it one and done?
This is one and done entirely. Once you go through entry-level driver training, you will not have to go through entry-level driver training again unless you are upgrading your CDL to from B to A, basically, or you are obtaining a new endorsement. So for school bus driver trainees, which is what our main focus is here right now, once you go through that process, you get your Class B, you get your S, you get your P, you're done. You will never have to deal with ELDT again.
However, it could be a good ongoing practice to provide ongoing training for your drivers.
Well, I will absolutely recommend that individuals continue to learn and continue to take safety training or best practice training. That is something that our system offers. And even if you're not going to use our system, I'm not a salesman, so I get to say this. Even if you're not using our system, right, this is absolutely something that you should be doing. Ongoing learning is the best way to make sure that people remain safe, to make sure that what you're supposed to be doing is kept top of mind and that you're doing it right. We all go through, life, and we hit those kind of like long stretches where things get very samey. Continuing to take training, continuing to learn means that you keep those issues that are really important top of mind.
Oh, Mark and I are huge fans of that. We talk about complacency zones and drivers all the time.
Absolutely.
So, a couple other questions we've had coming in. Is there a final exam?
There is no final exam. The way that our system operates, we have it set up to where you'll have a total assignment. So say for your Class B CDL, you'll have those 29 topics. Each of those 29 topics, honestly, it'll probably be more than 29 topics because we'll have more than one video covering each topic. So each of those topics will have their own test. Once you get through all of the tests, all of the videos, the assignment completes and you're done. Okay. We don't think it's a good practice, especially over the course of something like, if you think about the course of going through 29 different topics to then quiz someone about a topic from, you know, section 1 or 2, that type of scenario. Again, that information, we're not trying to trick anyone or trip anyone up, but we want to make sure that when we're delivering information, people are focused on that information. They're not focused on information from 2 hours before that type of situation.
Will there be any discrepancies, say, for example, if you hire a driver that is moving from one state to another? Is this a state line, state-specific requirement?
No, as long as their CDL is valid, right? Then they qualify as far as entry-level driver training goes, right? Now, there are processes where you have to go through certain states to update different things, et cetera, but that doesn't matter. The records of completion of them having gone through entry-level driver training will be disseminated throughout the nation.
Yeah, that's federal,
and that's kind of the design, right? That's the whole point is prior to this establishment, the training requirements are all over the place from state to state, et cetera, et cetera. What the FMCSA is trying to do here is make a national minimum so that we don't have to go through all of this anymore. Excellent.
All right, a couple others here. How do you get registered? We'll send out the instructions as part of the follow-up email. The FMCSA's, it's got like a 7-page document that walks you through the steps so that you can get assigned your own TPR number. Cost of the program, that's actually a great question for Leslie. Mark and I and Jeremy, we are not in sales. And so I don't know. But Leslie does handle those kinds of conversations, and we can get her contact information on the screen here again for everyone so that you absolutely can reach out to her directly and she can get those squared away with you. The tests are online with our program. That is correct. Everything we do is online so that we can log and track it all. And it will give them the score as soon as they complete it, whether they have passed or failed. If they have failed, they do have the ability to retake. Jeremy, I guess a question I have for you is, do they have the ability to see the questions they got wrong if they take a quiz?
I'm not sure. We're still in the final stages of deciding exactly how we want that content to look. We've gone one way or the other with content in the past, trying to determine whether or not it's a better learning scenario to be able to identify what you've done wrong or not. We're still making that final decision in the next 2 months.
Okay, to just flesh that out for those of you on the call. In a lot of our safety training right now, an administrator for a particular school district or school bus company has the ability to allow a student, a user, as it were, to see what they got wrong, or conversely, not see what they got wrong. So they have to go back through the video, pay closer attention so that they are making sure that they're learning and understanding the information before they take the next quiz. So it sounds like that's still something we're waiting to be determined. There's arguments made on both sides about why the value.
My assumption is, absolutely. My assumption is that we will probably end up defaulting to the administrator again. The only complicated scenario is what happens when there's not an administrator, right? When we're doing individual basis. And in those probable instances, that's where we're kind of on the not sure if we're going to go one way or the other.
Gotcha.
And the content can be delivered either on through the platform, either on a cell phone or a laptop.
Correct. It is it's designed to be used on mobile devices, whether that's a tablet, a laptop, smartphone. We do have app versions available as well that are fully functional, and they do have access to all of the content through those apps as well. And everything that they do on those apps is logged just as normal activity. So if you do it on a computer, if you do it on your smartphone, all the reporting goes to the same place.
Excellent.
All right here. Well, Jeremy, we covered a lot of ground today. So
Jeremy, it's safe to say you've got thousands of hours invested in this. Is that a fair statement?
A large amount of time, absolutely.
Yes, that's very impressive. And as just an industry, this your program is clearly going to be a trailblazer in the ELDT program and be able to keep up with it. So I can't imagine a program that doesn't have Infinit-I as a partner going forward. You would have to do this yourself, and that's not feasible.
A couple other questions coming in here. Will the program track the time per individual? Yes, it will. You will be able to see by user how much time they spend on individual modules of training. So thank you, Leslie, for jumping in on that. And then when adding an assignment for a person, so signing out the theory training, what I would actually recommend, and Leslie, you can jump in on here too, because I know you have a ton of experience on setting up assignments, probably want to set up a template just for the entry-level driver training that has presets for that content. So rather than you doing it over and over again, one at a time, adding in the content you want, you can set up a template which will preset a lot of that, and then you can just assign it out as needed.
In fact, for clarity, I think that's what we're going to require. Because of the certification requirements that go into this and the percentage grades that the FMCSA requires, probably what our plan is to do is to, if a client is utilizing entry-level driver training with us, we'll just have a base template that you use for entry-level driver training. That way there's no confusion, there's no mistakes of, oh, you didn't add all of the right topics, or you combined some of the topics that you shouldn't, or anything like that. So we'll just have templates where you go, I want to add class B, boom, done. I want S endorsement, boom, done, period.
Excellent. All right, we did have a question that came through. What is the name of the app? The app is actually under the program name for the platform. It's Infinit-I, Infinit-I Workforce Solutions. And what happens is that every group that we work with has their own company code that is associated with them, and that has to be entered the first time a user goes in to access their training. But as with many apps, they only have to do that the one time unless they change their device or they remove the app from their phone or their tablet.
That's right. Another question, we actually had this from you yesterday, Mark. Will we need to keep a copy of their certificate in our employee files? No. So what this is going through entry-level driver training. The driver trainee obviously will have their own records. They'll be able to keep their own certificate. But the federal government, through the training provider registry, will be archiving all of that information, and that information will go out to all of the state CDL licensing agencies, meaning that you can't even get your CDL or your S or P endorsements or anything like that. You can't even get them unless you have gone through the ELDT training, meaning that by the time the driver actually gets to you, right, and you have a employee file or anything like that, then the federal government at the FMCSA already goes, oh, they have a CDL, you don't have to worry about having their certificate. As for right now, bear in mind that might change, so we'll keep that information top of mind. But for the moment, no, you do not need to have their certificate in their employee file. Now, if you wanted to put their certificate in the employee file, there's nothing to say that you couldn't or shouldn't do that. So it's just not a requirement currently.
Excellent. Now, someone had a question about the registration. The training provider registration site is this second link on this page, this www.tpr.fmcsa.dot.gov. Again, we'll send you that follow-up document with the replay that has this information and how to navigate that site when we're done today. Excellent. Now, if somebody, here's one for you. This is a little bit a different. If somebody need to get their S&P done right now, we're going to have that content up by Christmas time. They should probably get it done before February 7th, right?
I mean, absolutely, right? If you have the ability, if this is something that you're considering doing, and you have the ability to do it right now, the requirements. Now I'll say this: I think you should do all of the training that is already going to be required.
Yes.
But right now, that training is not required. So if you want to go get your S&P, get your Class B, etc., now's the time to do it. Absolutely.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, Jeremy, had a ton of stuff shared today. I appreciate that so much.
A lot of
Leslie,
really good questions.
thank you for being here as well. I saw you burning up chat. I appreciate that. So, and I'm sure you will be hearing from some more of the individuals that were on the call with us today. And Mr. Mark, it is always a pleasure to join you. And thank you to everyone that joined us out in TV land. Again, we will be sending a follow-up that will have the PowerPoint presentation that we went through today. We'll have the webinar replay. We'll have the link to the FMCSA TPR resource page PDF, so that if you want to get squared away as your own training provider, that you can certainly do so. And that will also have question answering on, what does the skills test entail and so forth, because that's the one thing that we don't cover as a theory provider is the skills test and the skills training, the actual behind the wheel. So, but otherwise, everyone, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you, and be safe out there, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Have a good one.